The alien ships floated above Earth like beautiful sculptures made of light and metal. Captain Rebecca Hayes stood on the bridge of the space station, looking out through the large windows at the most amazing sight she had ever seen. The Galactic Confederation fleet had arranged itself in perfect rows, each ship gleaming like a polished mirror under the light of the sun. Each alien vessel was a work of art. The ships had smooth, curved surfaces that flowed like water, with no sharp edges or ugly patches. They looked nothing like the boxy, practical ships that humans built. These ships seemed to have been designed by artists who cared more about beauty than function. Commander Tom Bradley stood next to Hayes, shaking his head in amazement. "Those ships are incredible," he said quietly. "They look like they were built by people who never had to worry about getting shot at." Suddenly, a tall figure appeared on the bridge in a shimmer of blue light. It was Ambassador Corvex, speaking to them through a holographic projection from his flagship. The alien was thin and graceful, with skin that seemed to glow slightly. When he spoke, his voice sounded like music, but there was something in his tone that made Hayes think he was talking down to them. "Captain Hayes," Corvex said with a slight bow, "we welcome Earth to the greater galactic community. We thought it would be appropriate to show you what the Confederation fleet can do." Hayes nodded politely, even though she could tell the alien thought humans were primitive. "We appreciate you taking the time to show us, Ambassador." What happened next was the most spectacular light show Hayes had ever witnessed. The alien fleet began firing their weapons in perfect coordination, creating beautiful patterns of energy beams that danced across space. The weapons were incredibly powerful. Hayes could see them vaporizing asteroids that had been placed as targets. Force fields suddenly appeared around each ship like soap bubbles made of light. When test projectiles were fired at the ships, the force fields deflected them easily, making the incoming attacks bounce away harmlessly. The ships began moving in perfect formation, turning and spinning in ways that seemed impossible, all without a single mistake or collision. Lieutenant Amy Foster was watching the tactical computers, and her face had gone pale. She leaned over to whisper to Captain Hayes, "Their smallest ship has more firepower than our entire Pacific fleet combined." Ambassador Corvex was clearly enjoying the humans' reaction. He gestured proudly toward his fleet as he continued his explanation. "These vessels represent 10,000 years of galactic engineering evolution. Our plasma cannons can melt asteroids into vapor. Our quantum shields can deflect any known weapon in the galaxy. Our propulsion systems actually bend space itself to achieve faster-than-light travel." Hayes watched the demonstration with the same calm expression she had learned during 20 years of military service. She had seen many impressive weapons in her time, but nothing like this. The alien technology was far beyond anything humans had ever created. Corvex pointed to the largest ship in his fleet, a massive vessel that seemed to glow with its own internal light. "The flagship Serenity alone carries enough firepower to destroy every city on a planet. Its shields have never been penetrated in 10,000 years of service. Its quantum processors can calculate the outcome of entire battles faster than organic minds can even understand the situation." The alien continued talking about his ship's capabilities, clearly expecting the humans to be overwhelmed by what they were seeing. Hayes could tell that Corvex thought this demonstration would convince Earth to immediately surrender to Confederation authority. The alien ships were undeniably impressive. They represented the pinnacle of galactic military engineering, fast, powerful, and beautiful. They moved like dancers, fought like artists, and seemed almost too perfect to be real. But as Hayes watched the demonstration, she began to notice something interesting. The alien ships were built for perfection. They were designed to never get damaged, never make mistakes, and never fight under less than ideal conditions. They were magnificent machines, but they were also fragile in a way that their builders probably didn't understand. Hayes had spent her entire career studying military history and strategy. She knew that real warfare was messy, unpredictable, and brutal. Beautiful ships were nice to look at, but they weren't necessarily good at surviving real combat. The alien fleet finished their demonstration with a final coordinated maneuver that left their ships arranged in a perfect geometric pattern. Every ship was exactly where it was supposed to be, every weapon was functioning flawlessly, and every system was operating at peak efficiency. "Very impressive, Ambassador," Hayes said when the display was over. Her voice was polite but gave nothing away about what she was thinking. "Your ships are remarkable examples of advanced engineering." Corvex seemed pleased with her response, clearly taking it as the amazement and submission he had expected from primitive humans. Hayes paused for a moment, then smiled slightly. "Would you like to see our fleet?" The question seemed to surprise the ambassador. Hayes could see him exchange glances with other aliens on his bridge, probably wondering what primitive human ships could possibly offer that would be worth seeing after their magnificent display. Of course, Corvex replied, his musical voice carrying a note of polite but condescending interest. We are always curious to observe developing military technologies. Hayes activated her communication system and contacted Earth's Naval Command. Admiral Morrison, you're cleared to bring the fleet up. Our guests would like to see what human ships can do. Ambassador Corvex's holographic image flickered in a way that Captain Hayes had learned meant the alien was amused. Of course, Captain Hayes, he said in his musical voice. We are always interested in observing primitive, that is to say, developing military technologies. Hayes could hear the condescension in his tone, but she just smiled and activated her communication system. Admiral Morrison, you're cleared to bring the fleet up from Earth. Our guests would like to see what human ships can do. While they waited for the Earth Defense Force fleet to arrive, Commander Bradley decided to explain how human ships work to their alien visitors. He knew the aliens would be confused by what they were about to see, so he wanted to prepare them. Ambassador, Bradley began, our ships operate on completely different principles than yours. We don't try to make our ships elegant or superior to enemy vessels. Lieutenant Foster activated the tactical display screens and brought up detailed diagrams showing the inside of human warships. The images showed cross-sections of various ships, revealing their internal structure and systems. Human naval architecture focuses on three main ideas, Foster explained. Survivability, redundancy, and adaptability. Corvex studied the displays and Hayes could see his confusion growing. The human ships looked rough and crude compared to the beautiful Confederation vessels. Human ships were blocky, heavily armored, and covered with what looked like repair equipment, spare parts, and emergency systems bolted onto every available surface. These designs seem very inefficient, Corvex observed, his tone suggesting he was trying to be polite about what he clearly saw as inferior technology. Why do your ships have so many backup systems? Our artificial intelligence can optimize ship performance far beyond what multiple redundant systems could achieve. Hayes stepped forward to answer the ambassador's question. Because our philosophy is fundamentally different, Ambassador. Your ships are designed to avoid taking damage by using superior technology. Our ships are designed to absorb tremendous damage and keep fighting anyway. Another alien voice joined the conversation as Commander Thex appeared in the holographic display. He had 4 arms and looked even more confused than Corvex. But why would you want your ships to absorb damage? He asked. Surely preventing damage is better than enduring it? Commander Bradley pulled up historical records from human naval battles throughout Earth's history. The displays showed ships from different eras, wooden sailing vessels, steel warships, and modern spacecraft, all sharing the same basic philosophy. On Earth, we learned over thousands of years of warfare that in any real conflict, ships get damaged, Bradley explained. It doesn't matter how advanced your technology is or how well you plan. In a real battle, things break, systems fail, and people get hurt. The question isn't whether you'll take damage, it's whether you can keep fighting after you do. The displays began showing human military concepts that were completely foreign to alien thinking. Damage control teams rushing to repair hull breaches while under fire. Emergency repair protocols that could restore critical systems using spare parts and improvised solutions. Compartmentalization that allowed ships to continue operating even when large sections were destroyed. Field modifications that turned damaged equipment into new weapons or defensive systems. Hayes watched the aliens' faces as they tried to understand these concepts. To them, it probably seemed like planning for failure instead of planning for success. Your vessels appear to have medical facilities built into them? Corvex noted as he studied the ship layouts more carefully. Hayes nodded. Every human warship has complete machine shops, spare parts for every critical system, and repair crews trained to fix absolutely anything while under enemy fire. We don't retreat to a safe location for repairs, we repair our ships while continuing to fight. Lieutenant Foster added another important point. Human ships are designed with the assumption that everything will eventually break down or get destroyed. So we make sure that when systems break, the ship doesn't die. She brought up comparison charts showing the difference between human and alien design philosophy. Your ships have fewer, more advanced systems that work perfectly under ideal conditions. Our ships have many simple, rugged systems that work adequately under terrible conditions. Commander Thex looked genuinely disturbed by what he was hearing. But this approach seems so wasteful. Why not simply build better systems that don't break? Bradley smiled grimly. Because there's no such thing as a system that can't be broken, Commander. In human military history, every perfect, weapon has eventually been defeated by someone who found a way to break it. Hayes could see that the aliens were having trouble understanding human military thinking. Their technology was so advanced that they had apparently forgotten what it was like to fight wars where victory went to whoever could endure the most punishment. "Ambassador," Hayes said, "your ships are built like precision instruments, beautiful, efficient, and effective under the right conditions. Human ships are built like hammers, crude, heavy, and nearly impossible to break." She paused and looked directly at Corvex. "The question is, what happens when precision instruments meet hammers?" The aliens exchanged glances that Hayes could only interpret as confusion mixed with growing worry. The first human ship to come up from Earth's shadow was the EDF Yorktown, and it looked like nothing the aliens had ever seen before. The massive battleship appeared to have been cut from a single giant block of steel. Where the alien vessels had smooth, flowing curves, the Yorktown was all sharp angles and thick armor plating. The ship bristled with weapon systems, sensor equipment, and what looked like construction machinery bolted onto every available surface. Commander Thex stared at the approaching vessel and muttered something in his own language that his translator had trouble converting to English. "Good Lord," was the closest it could manage. "It looks like a floating fortress." More human ships followed behind the Yorktown. Cruisers, destroyers, and frigates emerged from Earth's shadow, each one built with the same philosophy of brutal practicality. They moved in a loose formation that seemed almost casual compared to the perfect precision of the alien fleet. Hayes noticed that every human ship's hull was marked with scars from countless training exercises and real battles. The human ships looked like they had been built by people who expected to get into fights and wanted to make sure they could survive them. There was nothing beautiful about them, nothing artistic or elegant. They were tools of war, designed by engineers who cared more about function than form. Admiral Jack Morrison's weathered face appeared on the main communication screen. He was an older man with gray hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of years spent in dangerous places. "Captain Hayes, the fleet is ready for demonstration." Hayes turned to face Ambassador Corvex's holographic form. "Admiral Morrison commands our Atlantic Battle Group. Admiral, our guests would like to see how human ships handle combat scenarios." Morrison nodded. "Copy that, Captain. We'll start with basic damage control procedures." What happened next surprised the aliens completely. The demonstration began with the EDF Portland, a heavy cruiser, deliberately shutting down its main engines and primary power systems. To the alien observers, it looked like the ship had been crippled by enemy fire and was now dead in space. But then, within just a few minutes, emergency power systems came online throughout the ship. Backup engines activated with puffs of exhaust vapor. Hayes could see repair teams through the ship's windows, working frantically on the damaged systems while wearing spacesuits. "The Portland is now operating entirely on backup systems while repairs are being conducted," Hayes explained to the confused aliens. "In human naval doctrine, a ship doesn't leave the battle just because it has been damaged." Ambassador Corvex watched in amazement as the crippled cruiser began moving again and started firing its weapons at practice targets. "But how can it fight effectively when its primary systems are damaged?" Commander Bradley answered with a slight smile. "It doesn't fight effectively, Ambassador. It fights adequately. And fighting adequately is often enough to win a battle." The demonstration continued with increasingly complex scenarios that would have been impossible for alien ships to survive. Human vessels took simulated damage that would have forced Confederation ships to retreat immediately, then simply adapted their tactics to work around the problems. When one ship lost its main weapons, it used smaller defensive guns as primary armament. When another ship's navigation system failed, nearby vessels guided it using radio communication. When a frigate lost half its crew to simulated casualties, the remaining sailors took over multiple jobs and kept the ship fighting. Most impressive to the aliens was how damaged human ships supported each other. They shared electrical power through cable connections. They transferred ammunition using small cargo shuttles. They even moved crew members from ship to replace casualties and maintain operations. "This is very inefficient," Commander Thex observed, but Hayes noticed that his tone was less certain than it had been before. Lieutenant Foster brought up tactical analysis charts on her display screens. "Actually, sir, it's extremely efficient in prolonged conflicts. Our ships can operate at reduced capacity almost indefinitely, while your ships need full functionality to remain effective in battle." The final demonstration showed something that left the aliens completely speechless. The EDF Seattle deliberately allowed itself to be destroyed in the simulation. The ship lost its bridge, main engines and primary weapons to simulated enemy fire. Any alien vessel would have been considered completely defeated at this point. But the Seattle kept fighting. The ship continued operating using auxiliary control centers deep inside its hull. Emergency engines pushed it forward at reduced speed. Secondary weapon systems, originally designed for close defense, began firing at enemy targets. The ship was clearly dying, but it refused to stop fighting. "How is that vessel still operational?" Corvex demanded, his musical voice rising with disbelief. Admiral Morrison's voice crackled over the communication system, and Hayes could hear the pride in his tone. "Because human ships don't have single points of failure, Ambassador. When one system breaks, we use another one. When that system breaks, we improvise something new." Morrison paused, then added, "The Seattle could lose everything except its crew and a single working gun, and it would still find a way to keep fighting." The alien delegates stared at the human fleet in silence, finally beginning to understand what they were really looking at. Ambassador Corvex straightened his tall, glowing form and activated several new holographic displays around the bridge. "Captain Hayes," he said with confidence, "the Confederation would like to propose a combat simulation between our fleets. A controlled battle in a safe environment." Hayes considered the proposal for a moment. "That sounds fair, Ambassador. What would be the rules for this simulation?" Commander Thex stepped forward to explain the details. "We will use standard Confederation fleet engagement rules. The first side to achieve decisive tactical advantage wins the battle. Obviously, no permanent damage will be done to any real ships." Admiral Morrison's weathered face appeared on the communication screen from his flagship. "Sounds reasonable to me. How many ships will each side use?" Corvex replied with obvious confidence. 6 vessels each should be more than sufficient to demonstrate our respective capabilities." The combat simulation began in a holographic battlefield that looked and felt exactly like real space combat. The environment included asteroids, radiation fields, and all the hazards that ships might encounter in actual warfare. From the very beginning, the alien ships demonstrated their clear superiority in almost every measurable category. They were faster than the human vessels, their weapons were more powerful, and their coordination was perfect. The Confederation ships moved like a single organism, each one knowing exactly what the others were doing at all times. The alien plasma weapons carved through space with deadly precision, leaving trails of superheated energy that would have vaporized any ship they hit. Meanwhile, their quantum shields deflected the human railgun rounds with apparent ease, making the human weapons look primitive and ineffective. Within the first 10 minutes of the simulation, every single human ship had taken significant damage. The EDF vessels appeared to be losing the battle badly, with multiple systems failing and hull breaches occurring across the entire fleet. Sparks flew from damaged control panels, emergency lights flashed red, and repair teams rushed through corridors filled with smoke. Ambassador Corvex watched the one-sided battle with what sounded like genuine pity in his voice. "Perhaps we should end this simulation now," he suggested. "Your vessels are clearly outmatched by our technology." Admiral Morrison's voice came back over the communication system, calm and steady despite his fleet's apparent defeat. "Just getting started, Ambassador." That was when the human fleet revealed its true nature, and everything the aliens thought they understood about space combat changed completely. Instead of withdrawing to safety as damaged ships normally would, the human vessels began adapting their tactics in ways the aliens had never seen before. Ships with damaged primary weapons immediately switched to secondary systems that were smaller but still functional. Vessels with compromised shields abandoned defensive positions and began using maneuverability and asteroid cover instead of technology for protection. Lieutenant Michelle Parker, who was monitoring the simulation from the bridge of the Seattle, delivered her status report in a matter-of-fact tone that shocked the aliens. "Main engines at 30% power, primary weapons completely offline, life support running on backup power. We're switching to guerrilla tactics immediately." The Seattle, which by all logical standards should have been dead in space, suddenly accelerated using nothing but small maneuvering thrusters. The damaged ship opened fire with point defense guns that had been repurposed as primary weapons. The alien ships, whose computer systems were programmed to expect damaged vessels to retreat, were caught completely off guard by this unprecedented response. Commander Thex stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. "This is impossible," he protested. "Those ships are critically damaged. According to all military logic, they should be retreating to repair facilities." Captain Hayes smiled grimly as she watched her fleet adapt to seemingly hopeless circumstances. "Commander, human ships don't retreat just because they're damaged. They only retreat when they can no longer contribute anything useful to the mission." The tide of battle began to shift as human crews performed what the aliens could only describe as impossible feats of engineering and determination. The Portland's engineering team rerouted electrical power through damage control systems to restore partial shield strength. The Miami's crew physically carried ammunition from destroyed weapons to ones that were still working. The Norfolk actually began using pieces of its own damaged hull sections as projectile weapons. Most disturbing to the aliens was the coordination between damaged human vessels. Ships that could barely fight when operating alone began supporting each other in ways that created a network of mutual aid. They shared power, ammunition, spare parts, and even crew members to keep the entire fleet operational despite devastating individual damage. How are they still fighting? Corvex demanded, his musical voice rising with frustration and alarm. His technologically superior ships were slowly being outmaneuvered by vessels that should have been nothing more than floating space debris. Admiral Morrison's voice carried a note of satisfaction as he answered. Because that's what human ships are designed to do, Ambassador. We don't build them to avoid getting hurt. We build them to keep fighting no matter how badly hurt they get. The alien delegates watched in growing amazement and concern as their perfect, undamaged ships found themselves losing a battle to opponents who refused to accept defeat. The combat simulation continued for 6 long hours, which was far longer than any Confederation battle in recorded galactic history. Most alien conflicts were decided within minutes by whoever had the better technology. But this battle just kept going and going, with neither side able to achieve complete victory. By the end of the simulation, the alien ships remained mostly undamaged and still looked beautiful and perfect. However, they had completely exhausted their ammunition supplies and energy reserves. Their advanced weapons had run out of power, and their perfect systems had nothing left to give. The human fleet, on the other hand, looked absolutely terrible. The ships appeared battered and broken, with hull breaches, damaged weapons, and systems that barely functioned. But despite looking like they should have been destroyed hours ago, every human ship was still operational and showed no signs of stopping the fight. Ambassador Corvex stared at the tactical displays with growing alarm and disbelief. "This changes everything," he muttered to Commander Thex, his musical voice now carrying a note of genuine worry. Captain Hayes deactivated the simulation and turned to face the alien representatives. The holographic battlefield disappeared, leaving only the real space around Earth where both fleets floated in their respective formations. "Ambassador," Hayes said calmly, "I think there has been a fundamental misunderstanding about human military philosophy." Admiral Morrison's weathered face appeared on the main communication screen. Behind him, Hayes could see his fleet still maintaining their formation despite all the simulated damage they had taken during the long battle. "Your ships are truly impressive, Ambassador," Morrison said with genuine respect. "They are technological marvels that represent the best of galactic engineering. But they are built for the kind of wars that your people fight, quick, decisive engagements where superior technology determines the winner within minutes." Lieutenant Foster activated the tactical displays and brought up comparative analyses between human and alien military doctrine. Charts and graphs showed the fundamental differences between the two approaches to warfare. "Human ships are built for the kind of wars we have fought on Earth for thousands of years," Foster explained. "Prolonged conflicts where victory goes to whoever can endure the longest, not whoever has the best technology." Commander Bradley stepped forward to add his perspective. "We learned warfare on a planet where survival meant outlasting your enemies, not outsmarting them with superior technology. Every major human conflict in our history has been won by whoever could keep fighting when their opponent could not continue." Corvex's holographic form flickered in a way that Hayes had learned to recognize as deep concern and worry. "But your approach seems so wasteful and inefficient compared to our methods." Hayes nodded in agreement. "In a short engagement, yes, our approach is wasteful and inefficient. But in any extended conflict, our ships would eventually win through sheer persistence and adaptability. Your vessels are magnificent examples of advanced engineering, but they are also—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Fragile." The word hung in the air between them like a physical presence. The aliens, who had arrived at Earth expecting to overwhelm primitive humans with their superior technology, suddenly realized they were facing something they had never encountered before. This was a species that treated warfare as an endurance contest rather than a technological competition. Admiral Morrison added one final observation that sent visible chills through the alien delegation. "Ambassador, your ships fight like perfect machines, efficiently and flawlessly until they take damage. Human ships fight like living creatures, adapting to injury, surviving terrible wounds, and actually becoming more dangerous when they are hurt." Commander Thex whispered something in his own alien language that the universal translators could not interpret, but his tone was unmistakably worried and frightened. Ambassador Corvex remained quiet for several long moments, clearly thinking about the implications of what he had witnessed. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost all of its earlier confidence and condescension. "Captain Hayes," he said carefully, "the Galactic Confederation greatly appreciates Earth's unique approach to fleet operations. Perhaps formal integration of humanity into our military structure is not necessary at this time." Hayes replied with perfect politeness, giving nothing away about what she was thinking. "Of course, Ambassador. We understand that different species have different approaches to galactic relations and military cooperation." As the alien fleet began moving away from Earth toward what they claimed was a safe distance, Hayes overheard Corvex's final transmission to his subordinates. "Commander Thex, update all Confederation military records immediately. Classify human space doctrine as unprecedented and potentially dangerous. Also, recommend that all future diplomatic contact with Earth emphasize our peaceful intentions above all else." Admiral Morrison chuckled as he watched the alien ships accelerate away from Earth's orbit with what looked very much like haste. "Captain Hayes, I think we just taught the galaxy something very important about human engineering and military philosophy." Hayes smiled as she watched the beautiful alien ships disappear into the darkness of space. "What's that, Admiral?" "That sometimes the best way to impress someone is not to show them how advanced and sophisticated you are. Sometimes it is better to show them how incredibly hard you are to kill." The alien ships continued their retreat, and Hayes knew that word would spread quickly throughout the galaxy about the species that built ships like hammers and fought like they had nothing left to lose.